As I work to create the perfect communist society, I'll take a couple minutes out of the day to point out just a couple flaws that currently exist in the capitalist system, like the new radical feminism.
I am no stranger to dirty words. I mean, I teach sex ed. Sometimes I say penis or vagina.
I find it very hard to believe that someone like you with this kind of flagrant YouTube channel could be given any kind of teaching position, much less one that directly deals with kids that you can infect with your biased and baseless beliefs.
But no word is so dirty as feminism. Say anything about it and suddenly I'm a feminazi and being compared to Hitler.
There's a pretty big difference between feminists and feminazis. You like to pretend that they're one and the same when they simply aren't. A feminist can be a peaceful protester who advocates women's rights, while you and your acolytes are feminazis, radical social justice warriors whose only joy comes from tearing down those who don't share the exact beliefs you loudly voice.
Being a feminist is very simple. It just means I believe in gender equality, and that's it. That is literally 100% it.
Look, I get if you have some trouble remembering facts, so I'll give you a tad bit of leniency. But when it comes down to you can't remember the definition of the cause you spend every waking moment fighting for, that's where I interrupt. Feminism is not about any of those things unless you want to admit that gender and sex are the same thing. Just a simple Google search can yield, and I quote, "Feminism is a range of movements and ideologies that share a common goal to define, establish, and achieve equal political, economic, cultural, personal, and social rights for women. This includes seeking to establish equal opportunities for women in education and employment. A feminist advocates or supports the rights and equality of women." End quote. Feminism has nothing to do with half the things you just spatted off about. You're turning an admirable crusade into something much wider than its intended scope.
It's mostly the right wing, and they've done everything in their power to undermine
Darling,
the movement.
that letter hasn't been in circulation for a while. I want you to read that third line there and tell me exactly how many people you know that believe in witchcraft. If you have any other response other than no, then you need to seriously rethink your strategies for defending this. What does it tell you about your argument when you have to resort to the most confrontational pamphlet you could find from what appears to be the 60s or 70s? Mind you that today's date is 2017. Much of these beliefs have been destroyed by much better and more likable women who fought for equality without being little hellspawns.
Equality. First, they deny that gender inequality still exists. Then they paint feminists as walking stereotypes. They cherry pick the extremists and they're like, this is feminism, look how radical it is. Okay, true.
You just admitted that all of your feminist acolytes were radicals and every stereotype that people are assigning them is completely validated. As a communist, you never admit there's no more food. You just keep telling people there's been a delay. Why would you openly admit that what you do is radicalism? Now, anything you say after this and anything you said before can be written off as extremist viewpoints, which is exactly what they are. At the very least, you're being honest.
In some ways, feminism is pretty radical, but only in the sense that it's radical to stand up for equality.
What do you mean? In today's Western world, it is not considered radical to stand up for equality. In fact, equality is probably one of the few things that America is truly struggling with right now. With all your power and all of that influence, you could be calling for real change in countries that treat women with the same respect as dirt. Where are your hashtags for women's treatment in Saudi Arabia? Where is the outcry for abuse in Zimbabwe?
Intentional distortion of feminism is nothing new. In fact, it's been around since feminists first organized. Sadly, those messages have managed to penetrate the cultural psyche, and now people are scared to call themselves feminists.
I'm sorry, but what exactly gives you the qualifications to express this opinion with such confidence in your own ability as a, what again? A doctor? Maybe a psychiatrist? Maybe even a therapist? Because last time I checked, your greatest educational achievement was graduating high school and a bachelor's in legal studies. Compliments of UC Berkeley. which we can probably assume you told your liberalist teacher these views and immediately received an A, but became shocked at the misogyny when you didn't get the same treatment at a regular college that required a little something called work in exchange for a master's.
3 pervasive myths about feminism that I would like to punch in the genitals.
Is it just me, or can anyone else just not wait to hear what these 3 myths are?
Number 1. Feminists are man-haters man-hating it up in their anti-man caves. I'd be lying if I said that beneath my bubbly exterior there isn't a bubbly pit of anger. I'm angry about inequality.
There's a difference between expressing your anger in a way that channels it healthily and allows you to be constructive with it, and just randomly flinging your hate at people you consider inferior simply because they are men, thus the opposite of feminism. Even if this isn't your intended purpose, you promote it with these kind of ignorant speeches. Imagine the kind of understanding that might ensue among your acolytes if you just explained what you meant instead of leaving it open for peaceful or incredibly hateful interpretation.
But that's hating sexism, not men as a whole. I mean, babe, come here. Am I a man-hater? Okay, don't answer that.
Way to show off how understanding you are. Even if this is a simple joke, it's an incredibly poor taste.
I think guys get defensive because we benefit from sexism. We're used to having women validate our opinions, so when it's a woman that challenges our view of the world, it's easy to take it personal.
First, I'd like to point out how it's obvious that he's reading from a script. Second, I'd like to say that what he just said makes no sense whatsoever. Men benefit just as much from sexism today as women do. Maybe 30 years ago, you could have said that and gotten away with more yays than nays, but today, that's just not true. We live in a society where actual sexism is not tolerated and normally met with punishment, not joking like what was just previously seen with Laci and her neutered manslave. Men aren't used to benefiting from it because when they tell their mom, wife, or girlfriend to stop what they're doing and make them a sandwich just because he's the man of the house, that same man is likely to get a strong backhand.
Myth number 2, I'm a humanist, not a feminist. Humanism is the belief that humans should focus on alleviating each other's suffering instead of relying on gods or religions or supernatural powers to do that for us. That's not the same thing as feminism.
You're right for once. Humanism is different from feminism. It actually sounds better. Imagine if everyone, male, female, black, white, were all working to make each other's lives equal and happier, instead of having feminists who only work for the betterment of women, until it gets to a point where they think women should be above men instinctively. By definition, humanism is the only ideology you can adopt, because any other one, like feminism, is sexist because it favors only one gender. So by calling yourself a feminist over a humanist, you've also technically acted sexist, thereby defeating the purpose of your feminism.
Saying I'm a blankety blank blank, not a feminist, basically erases the issue of gender. It sweeps it into this huge landscape of human issues which are all equally important but markedly different.
But that's just the point. The whole objective of feminism, humanism, etc., is to make the world equal, to create a quilt without seams. That divides everyone and causes friction between opposing sides. By calling yourself a feminist, even if you look for social justice for women, it's only for women, thus creating a seam in the quilt. Humanism erases those seams. Even though I am not personally a humanist, I can see its obvious benefits when compared to feminism.
It also erases the entire historical movement that is feminism.
Actually, it doesn't. With the realization that some of feminism's goals will be achieved before other ones, you must also accept that feminism will evolve with it so as not to be left in the past. Humanism is really just a modern feminism that appeals to everyone instead of marginalizing itself to just women.
Number 3, I'm not a feminist, but insert feminist opinion here. Whenever my friends do this, I just want to be like, you are feminisming right now! Feminism! Fully loaded! I'd love to see a world where there are no more, I'm not a feminist, but...
You have to see why they're saying that, right? You can't be that blind. Laci, you said earlier that your movement is radical, and I can't help but admire how you bear that with pride in the face of so much negativity. But you can't agree that your tactics and reasonings are extreme and then not understand why most people aren't jumping ship with you. You've ostracized yourself by being a radical and made the title of feminist a derogatory term because you've made it a radical term. So now people that want change won't call themselves feminists solely so that they won't be associated with you and your kind.
Instead, I would just like a world full of actual butts. Can we do that? Let's go, people.
Why does she have any followers?
J.K. Rowling once wrote that fear of the name only increases fear of the thing itself.
Yeah, because she was talking about Voldemort.
By actually calling ourselves feminists, we align ourselves with the great legacy of equality, this epic movement of women and men who made it possible for us to be where we're at today. By calling ourselves feminists, we stand up to the misogyny and ignorance that has undermined that history.
I hope that's some kind of bad joke. History will not look back and smile upon you, Laci Green. History will look back and see people who pushed too far for equality and caused a divide between races and genders that was greater than ever. And history will wonder why anyone ever invested so much into a woman whose degrees consist of a bachelor's in legal studies from UC Berkeley.
We remind others that feminists are simply people who believe in equality of the sexes, who
The name and the definition would imply that it's actually just equality for the female sex.
want to see a more just world, and there's nothing dirty about that.
I don't know what your definition of dirty is, but shaming men for their genitals and degrading women for having a different opinion sounds pretty dirty to me. As always, subscribe, comrades, if you feel a need to see more, and maybe give the gulag a like. It's been a painful experience, but I got through the whole video. Post below your thoughts and what videos or people I should inquire of next. This is your comrade, over and out.